It is no wonder, given these two divergent constructs and worldviews, that they can see the same event and reach two vastly different conclusions. With that in mind, let's watch the Alton Sterling altercation with two officers analyzing from both perspectives. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discourse Politics. This is episode 2 of 3 of the series Anatomy of Race Riots. Today we will be discussing media bias and the justice system, specifically law enforcement. As you can tell by the thumbnail and the picture that I'm showing you now, these two pictures paint two different stories of Michael Brown. Although we will ultimately analyze the Alton Sterling video, it is important to see how the portrayal of an individual matters. So let's begin. Liberal media views the justice system as a series of injustices. Conservative media views law enforcement as a necessary effect of crime. So let's see how these two views are built. In the first episode, we discussed conservative and liberal bias in coverage and discussion of poverty. If you missed that discussion, there will be a link in the description below and you can check it out after this video. So the base level to form these two views starts where we ended the last video. For liberal media, the base is structure, which is the factors of influence such as social class, religion, gender, ethnicity, and customs that determine or limit an agent and his or her decisions. For conservative media, the base is agency, which is the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make their own free choices. Since we started last episode with the liberal argument, we will start with the conservative argument this time. To the conservative mind, crime is a choice by the individual. And when you look at crime statistics, there is no great mystery as to why there are several police altercations between African Americans and police. These numbers come from the Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Statistics, released in 2011. This was a comprehensive report from 1980 through 2008. On page 11 of the report, it analyzes homicide victims and perpetrators by race. It says, blacks were disproportionately represented among homicide victims and offenders. In 2008, the homicide victimization rate for blacks was 19.6 homicides per 100,000, was 6 times higher than rates for whites, which was 3.3 homicides per 100,000. A little further down, it says, in 2008, the offending rate for blacks was 24.7 offenders per 100,000, which was 7 times higher than the rate for whites, which was 3.4 offenders per 100,000. So basically, crime rates, and largely violent crime rates, according to FBI statistics, which I will talk about next video, makes police interactions necessary. On the left, we can look at the new Department of Justice report on Baltimore police to see how the left feels about this issue. The article titled Analysis, Department of Justice Report on Baltimore Police Department, Scathing but Not Surprising, by Trymaine Lee, lists injustices and racial discrimination for a little over 5 years. The article says, between January 2010 and May 2015, federal investigators found that 300,000 pedestrians were stopped and less than 4% were ever arrested or issued a summons. 44% of those stops were made in 2 small, mostly black neighborhoods, home to just 11% of the city's population. African American residents were 3 times more likely than whites to be stopped and searched by police. Though whites were twice as likely, they were twice as likely to be found with illegal guns, drugs, and contraband. Police conducted stops, searches, and arrests without meeting the requirements of the Fourth Amendment. Police routinely used unreasonable force and unnecessary violence when dealing with mentally or emotionally disturbed individuals. Police often retaliated against those individuals for not immediately obeying commands or mouthing off. 91% of the arrests for failure to obey or trespassing were black. The department's practice of transporting detainees placed detainees at significant risk. This type of profiling has caused unease and outright mistrust from the African American community towards law enforcement and their procedures. An AP poll states that as many as 50% of African Americans say police have treated them unfairly. Another 7 out of 10 say they don't trust the police at all. For the liberal media, it is difficult to blame individuals when law enforcement and the justice system as a whole specifically targets them. This is the quintessential chicken or the egg dilemma. in which conservatives and liberals see the causal flow in opposite directions. To the liberal mind, injustices create crime and also create inequality of punishments. To the conservative mind, crime creates tougher law enforcement. With respect to the Department of Justice report, one example conservatives would give is to say that the most likely reason 44% of stops were made in two neighborhoods is because those two neighborhoods are experiencing the most crime. Police have to go where the crime is, and their job is to stop it if they can. The question to conservatives is whether or not the police are shooting African Americans for no reason, and the data doesn't show discrimination when lethal force is used. Conservatives here lately have turned to a study that was published in July 2016 called An Empirical Analysis of Racial Difference in Police Use of Force. It is a good, comprehensive study by Roland G, pictured here, and it's basically a compilation of several different studies to find the disparity in use of force with police officers with respect to race. He writes, "Yet on the most extreme use of force, officer-involved shootings, we are unable to detect any racial difference in either the raw data or when accounting for controls." Originally, I was planning to show the Washington Post lethal force database. When you look at that database for 2015, police use of lethal force really depends on two factors. Is the suspect armed, and is the suspect threatening the police? I chose to save this analysis for the next video, which will analyze Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. But in a nutshell, there doesn't seem to be any discrepancy when accounting for the perpetrator and whether they had a gun or whether they were threatening the police. However, when liberals look at that same study by Fryer, there is a vast difference in the application of non-lethal force. Fryer writes, "On non-lethal uses of force, there are racial differences, sometimes quite large, in police use of force even after accounting for a large set of controls designed to account for important contextual and behavioral factors at the same time of police-civilian interaction. Interestingly, as use of force increases from putting hands on a civilian to striking them with a baton, the overall probability of such an incident occurring decreases dramatically, but the racial difference remains roughly constant." So basically, up to but not including lethal force, police are more likely to use force on African Americans. He even mentions earlier in the study that officers are quicker and more likely to draw their weapons when it comes to minorities, particularly African Americans. For the liberal mind, this is the problem. The African American community doesn't trust them because they are likely to be treated unfairly. Now, I want to take a moment to point out what just happened. Both the liberal and the conservative media were looking at the same study, but they cherry-picked what they wanted to see. It's really disgusting. I really don't know how else to put it, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it, which is why I started this channel. But anyway, moving on. Now that we have constructed the framework of how conservative and liberal bias view law enforcement, we can get to the most important part of this video, which deals with Alton Sterling. The following information comes mostly from wikipedia.org. A link will be in the description. This is how the left views Alton Sterling. Alton had a rough childhood. His mother died when he was young. His father was not present. He was raised by his aunt. He was known locally as CD Man, being a person who sold CDs. He would often give away free CDs and buy food or drinks for others in the S Food Mart, which is where the incident happened. He was a natural at selling CDs. He knew every genre. His friend, who was also the convenience store clerk, said Sterling was not the one causing trouble. And the saddest part is one of the videos, not the video that we're going to watch, but one of the last videos of Alton Sterling was filmed by that same friend at the convenience store. To the right, Alton Sterling had a criminal record from his past, which included aggravated battery, criminal damage to property, unauthorized entry, domestic abuse battery, carnal knowledge of a juvenile, failure to register as a sex offender, and in 2009 he had possession of marijuana and intent to distribute, which, when he resisted arrest, he was tackled and a semi-automatic gun fell from his waistband. He got 5 years in prison for that 2009 arrest. He threatened a homeless man with a gun, allegedly, and the dispatcher told the officers that he flashed a gun, and some reports say that the dispatchers told them he pulled a gun on the homeless man. It is no wonder, given these two divergent constructs and worldviews, that they can see the same event and reach two vastly different conclusions. With that in mind, let's watch the Alton Sterling altercation with two officers analyzing from both perspectives. The goal is to watch the events leading up to the use of lethal force through both perspectives. For the record, I will not be showing the full video for obvious reasons, and in fact, it's hard for me to watch. So let's proceed. So what you just heard was Alton Sterling being tasered by the police. That's what that popping sound was. And already you're going to see a discrepancy between the two worldviews. For the conservative, they told him clearly to get on the ground, and he disobeyed an order. For them, they view that as essentially resisting arrest, or at least disobeying a lawful order. So the left sees this differently. They see a guy minding his own business. According to witnesses, he wasn't causing any problems, and the police roll up because the dispatcher told them that he pulled a gun on someone. They have an overheightened sense of fear, and they don't view Alton Sterling as somebody who's worthy of being treated as a human being. Here again, this is where conservatives and liberals have a completely divergent view on what just happened. They just see a guy, he's not doing anything wrong, he's not posing a threat, and the police are overreacting to what the dispatcher told them. Maybe giving just a split second of thought, is this even necessary? Is this even the right thing to do? The right sees this quite a bit differently. He was told to get on the ground. He didn't. He was then tasered, which had not the effect that they were hoping for, and now they have to take him down by force. If they said to get on the ground, then get on the ground. It's that simple for a conservative. For the conservative mind, it's essentially saying, if you just follow the rules, if you just listen and say, okay, they told me to get on the ground, I'm going to get on the ground, there would be no use for lethal force. And that's as far as we're going to go. The next 3 frames, Alton Sterling loses his life. So the events that transpired to the ardent ideologue on either side is as follows. To the left was a guy minding his own business and was being harassed, as African Americans always are, by the police. To the right, this was clearly a case of follow simple directions. You were given a lawful order. You, previous to this, had allegedly pulled a gun on somebody, or at least flashed your weapon at someone, and the police told you to get on the ground. They know you're armed. They have an obligation to protect themselves, and they have a duty to protect themselves. They're supposed to protect themselves as well as the citizens. When you disobey a direct lawful order, unfortunately, for a lot of people on the right, you forfeited your life, and that was your choice. To the left, none of that had to happen. It wasn't Alton Sterling's choice to be harassed by the police. So there you have it. As a country, we are viewing the same event and splitting into 2 groups, those that see crime leading to a strict law enforcement, and those that see strict law enforcement as a crime as well as a source of crime. But the worst part is we never talk about solutions. We see an event, and the right accuses the left of the need to get crime under control. The left accuses the right of racism and perpetuating systemic oppression, and we never talk about solutions. Maybe instead of spending so much time talking about how stupid the other side is, maybe we should spend some time figuring out how we can fix this situation. So my questions are these. 1, when are we going to talk about solutions? And 2, what do you think those solutions can be? Please start the discourse below in the comment section. Be sure to share with friends. If you like what you saw, click the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching.